This is Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski. Here now, Tony Brueski.
Whether McClellan's just incompetent and really, really not detailed and bad at his job, which I guess may be the case, or this is a purposeful railroading job against Richard Allen. Either way, the effects are the same to Richard Allen. It doesn't necessarily mean what the intent was. It means anything. Incompetence or ill will still affects him the same way. At what point can we look at McClellan and go, okay, you are not qualified to handle this case. Like, you're not qualified to even do your job. So, I mean, is there a point where another court can look at this and go, okay, there needs to be a different prosecutor here because this person, they can't seem to handle the basics of their job. And at worst, maybe there's something else happening. I mean, is there a path for something like that?
You know, regardless of how egregious some errors may have been, uh, the entity that gets to decide which prosecutor is on a case, by and large, is the prosecutor's office.
Yeah.
And so a judge typically can't say, hey, you screwed this up royally. Your chief should be smart and put someone else on. I guess they could say that, but they can't force a new prosecutor on the case. Sometimes there are motions to disqualify, but those are usually where there's some kind of actual legal conflict as opposed to just alleged misconduct. Yeah, it's typically just a decision the prosecutor's office would have to make. If they're smart and if they're prudent and if they're fair, I think they could consider somebody else.
So give me an insight here as to where McClellan is on the prosecutor's office. It does, especially when an entity investigates itself and has to make these choices, it's not usually always the best choices that are made. So is there other people in this prosecutor's office that could say, hey, Nick, maybe go take a trip to Dollywood this weekend. Here's some tickets. In fact, stay there for the next year. Go have fun. It's a lovely place. Try the chicken. And we're going to get somebody else in here to do this. What is that process like if it were to be explored? And do you think there's a chance in hell it would be explored in this case?
They could, and in my impression, they should. This kind of thing happens regularly in prosecutors' offices, and including in the one where I worked, where sometimes a prosecutor is just not the best fit for a case for various reasons. It could be they screwed the case up. It could be they got too personally attached to the case. It could be that there is something in that prosecutor's background that compromises their objectivity in terms of decision making. And so for those reasons, prosecutors are often rotated out. There are new prosecutors that come onto cases, and especially with one that has been plagued with such allegations of misconduct, I think it'd be a smart move for the prosecutors to get somebody else on it.
We know that they are now appealing the conviction officially. Those files have just been filed. Where does it go from here with this appeal? What court does it go to? What judge is going to be seeing this? What are the next steps in the future timeline here in the case against Richard Allen?
So oftentimes the first, so there's a doctrine called exhaustion of remedies, where the defense has to go up the ladder kind of to each individual court, expressing their grievances and requesting a new trial or vacation of the conviction. Typically, that starts with Judge Gold with a motion to reconsider. We might be past that. I'm not entirely sure.
Mm-hmm.
But the next stage would be the appellate court. So the state appellate court there, and then the state Supreme Court, if the appellate court does not reverse the conviction. From there are also habeas corpus petitions that can be filed in federal court. So like I said, there are a number of layers of review, and hopefully one of them is going to get this right.
So basically, we're looking at if it's not going to Gulf first, we're going to go to state, and then if they say yes, let's play out the possibilities here. They say yes, it looks like you should be able to appeal this. Is that just the state going, Gull has to go back and review this again, or is the state able to make a call here and say, I mean, tell me what this means?
Yeah, certainly. So the appellate court at the state level that is above Judge Gold, they could review this and say, hey, look, I think there was a Brady violation and I think a new trial is warranted. That would be the most likely remedy. A complete dismissal from an appellate court is much more rare. So if there was a new trial, then it would go down, but it would usually go back to Judge Gold, even if she was the one who made the alleged errors that the court found as grounds, or at least partial grounds, for reversal. So it goes back kind of to the drawing board. Now it could be given to a different judge at Judge Gold's level as well.
It does seem like insanity. I mean, you're giving it back to the same people. I mean, especially if there is violations that were like clearly, in violation of the actual defense that seem to have some sort of malice to it, to go, okay, just try this again. Let's hope you have a different opinion this time. Is this a big flaw in our system where maybe that should be a little ironed out better?
I think there are several flaws like that.
Yeah.
Another similar one is where a trial happens and a defendant is convicted and they believe that the judge made a bunch of errors at trial. They have to file, usually in most jurisdictions, a motion to reconsider or something. They style it differently in different places, but they have to go back to that same judge and be like, hey, we think you screwed up on X, Y, and Z. Do you agree with us? 9 times out of the 10, the judge is like, no, I was right. And so it just seems like kind of a silly exercise.
Like, follow the yellow brick road. Oh, look, it's Mr. Oz again. Oh, surprised to see you here. Okay, so that's state. Let's say the state says, no, we think this all worked out lovely. You can go to the state Supreme Court. What's the options from there?
Totally. So state Supreme Court would be above the appellate court level, but still at the state level. And they would review it just the same. And so you get kind of another bite at the apple in that sense if you're defense and the appellate court ruled against you. The state Supreme Court could absolutely impose a new trial. The state Supreme Court could dismiss the charges. Like I said, those are pretty darn rare. But if the state Supreme Court orders a new trial, well, we're going back down to the trial level, and that's likely Judge Gold.
Back to Oz. Damn it. Haven't we established all the remakes of Wizard of Oz suck? Don't do it. Okay. And let's say it fails there too at the Supreme Court level. And it seems like all roads lead back to Gold for the most part. Habeas corpus with the federal level. What happens on that one?
Yeah, those are less often granted than like a direct appeal at the state level. So it's kind of a Hail Mary. It's kind of a last-ditch effort to obtain some relief for the defense. But every now and again, they are granted. The federal court disagrees with the state court's rulings and orders a new trial. Sometimes, even when a new trial is ordered, a bond is issued pending that new trial. But in this case, with 2 child deaths, I don't see that happen.
Is there, I know you had mentioned, like, they could, even on a state level or a state Supreme Court level, if they decide it goes back, they could say, okay, we're going to find a different judge here. But if they don't, I mean, is there any like direct path that they have to get this in a different atmosphere other than Gull World?
Yeah. So if defense got a new trial, they could file like a motion to recuse Judge Gold, essentially just arguing the grounds that, hey, Judge Gold was the reason for some of these errors and exhibited, in defense's opinion, substantial bias against the defense. And even if that motion is not meritorious, sometimes it's enough for a judge to be like, hey, I don't agree with any of this and I don't think any of this is right, but to avoid the appearance of impropriety, I'll give it to someone else. That's a possibility too.
It's the problem is the person who decides that is Gull, right?
Yeah.
Again, hey, we're going to say all these things that we don't think are right about you. Will you admit to it? No. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, where do you think, in your opinion, after you've been watching this case with all of us for a long time now, where do you think this should go, and where do you think this will go? That may be 2 different questions.
I think an appellate court reviewing, a state appellate court reviewing the appeal, especially on the Brady violation argument, that has real traction, and that often results in reversals. And here, in talking about whether it's important, well, it shows a potential alternative suspect for whom there is other corroborating evidence that they might be guilty. And on top of that, it should have been turned over, couldn't have been used by defense in the first drugs. They didn't have it. And so the most fair option is a retrial. And I think that there is at least a reasonable likelihood of Richard Allen prevailing on that ground, or at least I think that's his strongest ground of appeal.
But if we do get back to Gull, the admission of evidence in here, the admission of third-party culprits, all of these things that were denied on failed round one, what's the incentive to allow it in this time? I mean, is there any reason to think that Gull would, if it does go back to her, that she'd be like, okay, let's let that in this round?
Judge Gull, as biased as any judge could be, they also don't want to get reversed. That looks bad for them. That looks bad for retention. I don't know if they're elected out there, judges out there, or if they're appointed, but it's just not a good look either way. And so, and she kind of has an out, because she could be like, hey, look, I didn't think there was enough alternative suspect in the first trial, but now with these letters, hey, I didn't know about that either. That gives me enough to meet the threshold of allowing an alternative suspect. She could kind of dance around it and let it in a way that might be self-serving, but also helpful for Richard Allen.
Do you think she'd recuse herself? I mean, she obviously, it's been brought up many, many, many times, and every time the answer is no. I don't see her doing it at any point in this, but I mean, at some point, do you just get sick of it and go, hey, you know what? Obviously, y'all got your opinions. For just the sake of this, another qualified judge can handle this. I'm going to go to Dollywood too, and I'm going to enjoy the funnel cakes for a week. What could happen here?
That's the thing, is that I think the smart move for her, even if she thinks she did nothing wrong, would be to say, like you said, there's another qualified judge who can handle this just the same. And even though I don't agree with any of the allegations against me, I want to preserve the integrity of this judicial process, of this judicial district, and I want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. I'm going to hand it off. I think that would be the smart move. Do personal feelings get in the way of making a smart move sometimes? Sure they do.
Craving non-stop true crime updates? Press subscribe now and get the latest cases, analysis, and expert commentary delivered straight to your feed, only from the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today.